Welcome to another caffeinated session of Success EQ Coffee Hour, a podcast where we keep it real about customer success strategies and get down to the nitty-gritty. I'm your host, Ritika, and today joining us is Eleni Vorvis, a seasoned customer success coach, advisor, and a leader who has partnered with many SaaS companies to drive success. Thank you so much for hanging with us today, Eleni.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure, great. So I am, as you mentioned, Eleni Vorvis. I'm currently a customer success consultant and fractional leader. So I work with a variety of SaaS startups. I'm based in the Boston area, and I've been doing customer success in various shapes and forms for the last 20 years. So it's been great to be part of CS, and now I'm excited to be on the side of consulting and working with a variety of companies, either in fractional roles or helping them to deliver workshops, customer journey mapping, process execution, etc.
Great. Great to have you today. So today, the topic that I wanted to discuss with you, it's actually, in my opinion, it's extremely crucial. And these days, it's often misunderstood in customer success world, quarterly business reviews or executive business review. And in my decade-long experience as a CSM or a CS leader, I have always found these meetings as a golden opportunity to align with customer goals, showcasing values, or just strengthening the relationship. But today, whenever I'm opening LinkedIn, I'll see posts with a headline saying EBR is dead. Stop wasting your time with the EBR or QBR. So earlier it used to confuses me as to why these top voices and the leaders are saying these things. But business reviews, the more and more I researched, I have found that business reviews are still a very essential and a essential part of billion-dollar companies or businesses strategy when they are trying to deliver excellent customer service and success. So, but if people are saying this, I'm sure there will be reason, So I wanted to connect with someone and discuss this topic and see what's actually happening. So let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. Which team are you on, Eleni? Are you on the EPR is dead side or still it's valuable?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, it's such a hot topic, and it's really interesting to see how some people are posting about it on LinkedIn. So I don't think that it's necessarily dead. I think it has evolved, or it needs to evolve in order for you to have the executive's attention. So I think in the past, we were very married to it had to be on a quarterly basis, and there was a push and a drive to have the meeting also happen in person. I think given the last couple of years, we're coming out of a pandemic. There's a lot more tools that companies are using, right? We are one of many SaaS solutions that they have implemented. So imagine being invited to sometimes a dozen QBRs or EBRs or more. So I think we have to really look at the size of the customers, the relationship. Are we in scaled customer success? Is it digital or is it more high touch? So the guidance I've been giving is you don't have to be married to a quarterly event if that's not what makes sense for your customers. And if you can do it in person, great. I think that's always wonderful. And sometimes it's around sharing a meal with the customer either the night before or after the event. So helping to strengthen that relationship. But if it can't happen in person, do it virtually. And if there's a subset of your customers where it just doesn't make sense to set aside that hour, put together a video with all of the key insights and the value that you're delivering. And that is another way that you can reach executives or other stakeholders at any time, right? Not having to wait for this business review.
I cannot agree more. But if there is more coming out, so I'm sure there will be some fire, something which is not working out right for a few of these companies. I know you have to customize the strategy based on, as you mentioned, your customer success team, your business, and so on. But what are some common pitfalls that you have observed in your career, in your experiences? How CSM teams perhaps prepare or do these executive reviews, which is kind of failing right?
Yeah, so I've got a few things that are top of mind. I think the first that comes to mind is lack of executive alignment. So, do you even have that in the first place? Is this the first time you're even going to be talking to the executive? Because if you are, the likelihood that they make the meeting and not cancel right before is not going to be that high. So if you're focusing on the operational details of the relationship or the partnership with the customer instead of the strategic priorities the executives care about, they're not going to be excited to want to join this call, right? So you have to tailor the discussion to their goals. The other pitfall that I've seen happen is data overload. So the CS team is spending so much time on analyzing the data within a BI tool or what they're pulling from their customer success platform, and they're presenting too much data without also taking it the step further of the insights or the actionable recommendations. Really needing to focus on highlight those key metrics and the implications that they will have on your customer's business. The other thing that can happen when you're preparing for multiple EBRs at the same time is that your content becomes too generic. So you can't use a one size fits all approach. There are going to be elements that I think you can put into a template for an EBR for sure, but then there will be the things that you need to customize based on what your customer is telling you, things about their industry or challenges that you know that they're directly facing. And then the failure to tell a story, right? If you're just listing all of the things that were achieved or checked off the box in terms of tasks, you're not really connecting them to the customer's objectives, or you're framing the clear narrative. So being able to weave in that storytelling is really important. Also, do not present at the customer for an hour. This is a collaborative effort. And the most successful EBRs that I've seen is when you take the time to have it be a two-way conversation. Ask for feedback, ask for questions, share the agenda ahead of time, make sure you understand what else they may want to cover. And then last but certainly not least, you walk away from the meeting and there are unclear next steps. So ending that meeting without the clear action items makes it really difficult for them to then see, what are we going to do next? And then they question the value of the partnership or the ability of the customer success manager to be able to deliver those outcomes that are key to their strategy.
Right. Excellent points, Eleni. I cannot agree more. Many CSMs struggle to move beyond, simply presenting the data to, they have to craft that story which truly resonates with the customer goals, what they're trying to do, their struggle. So how they can make this shift? Like, what does storytelling in EBR looks like? Can you give some tips on that?
Sure. So I think it all starts with thinking about the customer's objective. So as you're preparing, right, there's going to be so much data that you can look at, but at the end of the day, the things that are going to matter is going to be data or a story that helps the customer understand that what you're doing is tying into their goals. So first, do you even understand what their goals are, both short term and long term? Those are conversations that should be happening even before you kick off an implementation with the customer or start to work with them, really understanding what is the problem or challenge they're trying to solve and how is your solution going to help them with that. So then you will align those insights to what they're looking to track. And that's going to speak directly to their priorities. The other thing is looking at making this engaging, right? So when you structure it like a story, what's a format or an outline you can look at? You first start with that problem. So highlight their initial challenge, then go to the action. So showcase what you did together to tackle that issue. And then what was the resolution? What are the results that then tie back to their business goals? In many cases, customers are buying a product to make more money, save money, or to be more efficient. Those kind of fall into the three buckets. And the numbers alone aren't going to help you tell that story. How you present them really does bring that information to life. So make sure that you've got your visualizations right, charts and graphs, any infographics that you think will be important to highlight trends or comparisons or improvement that's been made. But then frame that data around your customer impact. So what happened? What was the actual time that you helped them save? You gave them back, say, example, 15 hours per week, etc. That's what makes the difference. And sharing those anecdotes and quotes from their users. Don't forget to ask the individuals that are using this tool, whether it's on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, how has this impacted the way that they do their jobs and that how it ties into their success? And then you also want to invite the customer to participate in sharing the story. So as I mentioned earlier, the EBR is not a one-way presentation. Asking questions to gauge their alignment with their priorities, encourage feedback on the data and the next steps that you presented. And then always end with that actionable insights that are going to be forward thinking, like link their progress to their next milestones and then suggest ways to optimize or expand on successful initiatives. I think customers also appreciate hearing about their peers and how others who have similar challenges are using the product. So make sure that you insert some of those examples, because 9 times out of 10, that is a question that will be asked from the executive. How do we compare? How are others doing in our industry? What is key for us? You want to make sure that they walk away learning something new. If they're just coming to hear about data, you could have sent them in a report, and it's not an engaging conversation in which they're learning something or giving them an action that they would not have figured out themselves, really. So what can you do? And it can just be that one powerful thing that really helps to move the needle with the relationship and with the impact you can make.
100%. I feel like the most successful business reviews that I have done was a very much collaborative effort with the customer itself, apart from my internal team, of course, which I'm, going for collecting data or creating that ROI impact. It was 100% collaboration with the customer, the person directly that I was working with, so that I can present his story rather than our story as a vendor. How he was able to turn around the situation, overcome this problem that the company was facing. So I have always found that if you're making them a hero, it really works out in your favor and it's a win-win for both the parties.
Yes, absolutely. They're not there to hear about us for an hour and our products and our features and just throwing all this information out there. They really want to know, how is the team doing? How has this impacted the way that they're able to do their jobs and to be successful? So absolutely. And giving them a voice. I mean, I think back fondly on EBRs that I did when I was a CSM, and the collaboration and working on the content beforehand really ensured that my champion felt included in the conversation. Their feedback was taken into consideration. We went back and forth on data, et cetera. They provided data on their end that they were pulling. I had a clear understanding of what was going on in their business in terms of updates. So the more you can show the customer that you understand their business and you know them and you are an extension of their team, that really solidifies the relationship. So it's a few simple things you can do in your research, and then asking the questions up front during the kickoff on what their goals are and how they're going to be measuring success is really important. They tell you that information. And so when you ignore it or don't use it in the EBR, they don't feel like you are listening to them or hearing them. They're just feeling like, okay, this is just a one size fits all presentation that you're giving to every single customer.
Right. It could have been an email, it could have been a video.
Right. It doesn't need to be a meeting that could have been an email.
All right. So the major, as a CSM, when I'm reading all of these, I feel like CSM puts so much effort. Like major portion of my everyday chunk was supposed to go in QBR preparation, because when I was a CSM, I had like 10, 12 strategic accounts, and each one of, if I have to do like 3 or 4 QBRs every quarter, I had to prepare for like 25, 30 hours. It can depend on how mature is your company, if you have templates, if you have our deck available to you out of the box where you can just put the numbers or calculate the ROI very simply. So it used to take a lot of effort, is what I'm trying to say. And I used to feel overwhelmed. And still, I have seen, as a leader, also have seen my CSM feeling overwhelmed. So because there's so much data, so many stakeholders which are involved, you have to juggle so many things. So what advice do you give to teams who, to prepare for these EBRs so that they don't feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it used to be a lot of manual work. Luckily, we live in an age now where AI can help with that. So I think there's a variety of ways that can help you to at least not spend hours, right, trying to pull the data, analyze the data, because you're going to many different places to help to tell the story, and then even putting together the slides or the video or collaborating with others who are going to be participating in the EBR. Because let's be honest, it's not just the CSM oftentimes that is presenting. There are other members of the team that are there to support from a product perspective, from an executive perspective, et cetera. So I think first and foremost, leveraging what you have for either like your CRM or your customer success platform. So a lot of that data on usage and trends and analysis will get piped into some system that you are using. So in many cases, you can even work with your admin of that platform or the company themselves to target a specific section on. You can just pull the QBR information. So I think nowadays you don't have to feel as overwhelmed with trying to pull that information or remember your notes. It's all in one place, and you can at least pull that into the deck. There's also making your slides look pretty, right? Now there's tools like Canva that can do that, or Gamma AI has the ability for you to put in your talking points in your notes, and they give you a variety of things that you can do. For those doing video executive updates, right, using something like Loom. And so there's just many ways to do things. I think also as CSMs, we're not having really to go into the BI tool because now there are data analysts, but those tools still exists. So if you are on the smaller side and you don't have a CSP, et cetera, you probably have data housed in one place where you can leverage, other people to kind of help come up with a template, like a data person at your company. But I think that these platforms nowadays do really give you the opportunity to gather like a lot of information up front that you wouldn't necessarily have had access to. And so you were spending more time analyzing, pulling that data and then not enough time to analyze, which was, such a shame. So now you have the ability to analyze. Also, I think there are companies, right, leveraging things like Chat GPT or competitors to put that data in there to get trends or alerts, et cetera. So now you just have information at your fingertips. And so I think every day now pops up a new startup that's also doing AI to help leverage and make your life easier. So it's definitely not a manual process. I would say don't get overwhelmed by putting the information together. There are tools out there. Spend your time on really thinking about what is the goal for the meeting, what is the customer expecting out of that meeting, and how can you get to that? Because you don't need a 40-slide EBR presentation. You also can keep it pretty straightforward, high-level metrics, and it's really about the conversations. That's the other advice I give to CSMs. They can get very overwhelmed with, well, I have to look at all this data, and what if they ask me a question and I don't know exactly where it came from? I said, they're not going to be nitpicking to that level or that degree. If they want to do that, you'll know ahead of time from your champion because they'll say, hey, this person may be an executive, but they're going to be hyper focused on this thing. So make sure that you can explain X, Y, Z. Usually it's just providing the clear path to here's the challenge, here's how we work together. You wanted to measure, improvements in X, Y, and Z. Here's how our product ties into that. Let's have a conversation. What are you seeing on your end? Is there anything else we could also be looking at? And so I think it's, folks are lucky nowadays to be in the world of leveraging AI versus spending so many hours. Imagine if you had to do 15 QBRs or 20. I mean, it was very overwhelming.
100% we should leverage AI, leverage different applications which are available in the market to see how you can simplify things. Since you were talking about it has to be really crisp and to the point, what are some data and metrics that the CSM should focus on when they are presenting? How do they decide? Because there are so many things that you want to squeeze into, one presentation in that 45-minute or an hour slot. So, what are some key metrics that they should focus on?
Yeah, I think the key data is the alignment with the goals. So use the metrics that you're measuring on your end that directly tie to the customer's objectives. So don't just present the metrics that you as an organization have decided are key success metrics. I mean, those can be included, but make sure you can then articulate how these metrics have made an improvement on your customers' revenue growth, decrease in what they're spending, their costs, and then improvements in efficiency. And so I think aligning on and agreeing upon what are the formulas that you're going to use, then make it very clear on what to present. I mentioned industry when we were talking about the prior topic. And so I think making sure that anything that you highlight, if you can include benchmarks or success indicators to that industry, that is what they're going to care about as well. And then when you look at the data, where is there the ROI? So that's looking at specifically in many cases, you're going to have some sort of ROI calculation, right? That's something that sales is talking about with the prospect on the front end. Many companies have an ROI calculator, or you've discussed with the customer, here's how we're going to define ROI for you specifically. So that's something you're going to want to measure and bring up every EBR that you have with that customer. Also, we mentioned, right, like just keep it high level unless you're specifically asked. In advance, collaborate with stakeholders. In many cases, these larger enterprise customers, we talk about that segment for a moment, will have data experts on their end who are also invested in making sure that the implementation of this enterprise software is going to be successful in them getting the numbers that they need. So in many cases, I've worked with those individuals through the champion to build a scorecard on what we want to be tracking. And then really focusing on the trends. So really avoid providing raw data, or let me pull up this Excel spreadsheet that I can walk you through. They really want to see where have we made progress and where are the areas of opportunity. So in your visualizations, making sure that you're highlighting those things or bolding them or just bringing them up as a summary on the slide as well. I think many people forget, they get so excited about here's this chart and articulating or verbally saying what the chart means, but put that in a call out box, right? Let's follow a lot of the consulting methodology of the past that still hold true. What is a summary or takeaway from each of those slides? Because you have to remember the deck would probably get circulated. And so anything that you're presenting, you want it to be able to stand alone on itself, that someone can read it and they can quickly understand the takeaway. Was this an improvement? Did we do poorly? If we did, what's the recommendation? And then how do we move forward?
100% agree. I feel like one more thing I used to add in here was if we mess up, how quickly we were able to, turn around the situation. If there were bugs, if there were issues, how quickly we were able to resolve that. That is also one matrix which I found it, again, depending on the company that I was working with a data company, and so it was really important for them to know how many times we were messing things up. So that was one important metric. But I feel like it goes with your point of deciding what metric is kind of important with the customer. So if you know that, you will be able to highlight what has happened in the quarter or in 6 months on the project.
Yep, that makes sense because if they're especially focused on that, say on their end with their customers, they will want to understand that metric as well for you. So it's really just about asking the question and getting that information when you begin the relationship. That way, this is something that you need to track. Or if there has been a major downtime or there was a bug or something that maybe took longer than usual to resolve, I think just getting ahead of those things and bringing them to light versus waiting for them to ask about it or to bring it up. You do want to comment on that. Here's the things that we learned from in the past quarter or X amount of time, I think is also helpful as well. It demonstrates that you're not trying to forget about it or hide it. I mean, it will have made its way up to the executive depending on how big of an issue it was, but what are you doing moving forward to prevent it from happening again, and sharing some of those things or maybe improvements you've made to your processes or the way that you work with customers as a result. I think for a lot of the smaller startups that are just beginning to get their momentum, those types of things mean a lot to their customers because they also are trying to be understanding that they're a smaller company, but also are pushing the startup to start to really look at the way that they are operating and to make sure that they're not making the same mistakes or being able to address some of these bugs or requests in general.
Yeah, very useful tip. So we are approaching towards we want to conclude this conversation, but I had one question that I wanted to ask, and I saw this post today itself when I went on LinkedIn that, it's very easy to get the first EBR, then everyone is coming, everyone is super enthusiastic. Then on second EBR, maybe half of the executives are not going to turn up, they have rejected your invite. And on the third EBR, nobody is turning up. So my point is, how do we ensure in last step that you want to give to make sure that they also know that, hey, this is important, this is not going to be my waste of time from my end.
Yeah, I think it's all about the expectation setting at the beginning of the relationship. So during a kickoff, I include a section on, what both sides are going to lean into to make this successful. So just key things that are part of the relationship. And so in many cases, I think CSMs or teams are forgetting to let the customer know that there will be this executive review. You can decide with the customer what makes sense on the frequent, or if we want to do one in person once a year and the rest will be virtual. So just having them agree upon what works for them and letting them know that the content is targeted at them, not the champion, not the users. We meet with them on a regular basis. So this is really a meeting for them to have a chance to hear about all of the great work that is being done and things that they can do to continue to move the needle and be successful with the product and get ahead of anything that could pose a risk to the relationship. So I think just letting them know up front and also setting the understanding that if we're not seeing that you're not going to accept the invite, we will be reaching out. If you're not able to make it, we're not just going to hold the meeting with the rest of your team. You are a required participant. Also, giving them the ability to tell us if it's not useful for them. So be honest, give that feedback. If you're finding that this is a waste of time, you're not going to hurt our feelings. Tell us because we want to know. Our goal is to not make it a waste of time. But if there are things that you want to see us incorporate into the business review, happy to do that. So I think just opening up the feedback loop is really important, and then just holding them accountable for the role that they play. Because once they they participate in the kickoff call, and then the executive does need to fade away a little bit to focus on the other priorities that they have at hand. But we need to revisit and have that conversation. I also make it clear that our executives are setting aside the time. They as well are also busy and have plenty of meetings. And so it's our responsibility as a CSM. It's making it not only valuable for the customer, but for the internal stakeholders that you're inviting. Everybody's time, respecting everybody's time, and figuring out the frequency and format that makes sense. Otherwise, just saying that if you're not showing up, it is a risk. It looks like we're not in alignment, and we're probably going to mark you as a customer that's in red, that's going to be likely to churn. And we don't want to assume that if you really are excited and energized. So let's keep the format and the frequency together. And also just keeping the expectation along the other ways that we'll be engaging with that executive, because it's not only for the EBR. They may do check-ins with our CEO. They may want to be invited to a close-knit circle of their peers at an event, right? So there's just many different ways, and just letting them know, here's how we typically work with our customers. What do you think, and how are you able to lean in?
I love your point about taking the feedback from them if this is wasting your time. Such a simple question, but most of the time we are just so scared to ask this. I feel like this is a really good way to know, okay, if this was helpful or not in any way for you. So thank you so much, Eleni. This has been such a valuable discussion. As we wrap up, any takeaways that you want our listeners to remember about making the EBRs impactful, if you want to share?
Sure. I would say, again, make sure that you are not getting bogged down with the data analysis or putting together all this data. Make sure you understand what goals your customer has, what is their, as a business, what are they looking to do? And a lot of that information is publicly available. So you can gather that and you validate it with your champion well before getting into the executive business review. I would say absolutely leverage AI and ways that you can make this process of putting together the content easier. That way you spend more time on thinking about, if these three things happen during the EBR, I would consider this a successful meeting, and one in which the executive will want to join time and time again.
Yes. Thank you so much, Eleni, for sharing the insights and your expertise with us today. I know our listeners are going to find this episode incredibly useful. To our listeners, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. If one thing, if any of our listener wants to connect with you, I'm going to put your LinkedIn ID in the description section. They can reach out to you, right?
Yes, absolutely. If anyone wants to talk about EBRs more or anything else related to any of these hot takes with regards to customer success, happy to chat. So you can send me a LinkedIn message.
All right. Thank you so much, Eleni, once again. And until next time, keep driving the customer success, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.